Do you remember a time when you thought, if I just made a little more money, things would finally feel easier? Like maybe you got a raise, or you switched jobs, or your household went from one income to two. And for a brief moment, you felt rich. You felt ahead. You felt like, okay, now we're good. And then somehow you're still stressed. Bills are still tight. Saving still feels fragile. One unexpected expense still sends your heart rate through the roof. And you're looking at your bank account thinking, how am I making more money than ever and still not getting ahead? Yeah, that feeling, that's not a coincidence. That's not bad luck. And it's definitely not because you're bad with money. That's the two income problem. And almost nobody talks about it honestly. My name is Jay, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, behavior, and why smart people keep making the same financial mistakes over and over again. And if you're someone who's earning more than you used to, maybe even doing everything right, but still feel stuck, behind, or weirdly anxious about money, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up, because this might be the most uncomfortable and freeing conversation you hear all year. Here's the thing. Most people think wealth is an income problem. They think, if I just made more money, I'd be fine. But the data in real life tell a very different story. Nearly 60% of households earning over $100,000 a year still report living paycheck to paycheck. Let me say that again. 6 figures, paycheck to paycheck. That's not a budgeting app issue. That's not a latte issue. That's something deeper. And this is where it gets interesting. Because the moment a household goes from one income to two incomes, something sneaky happens. Something psychological, something structural, something that quietly locks people into a financial life that looks successful but feels incredibly fragile. Let me paint a picture. Imagine a couple, we'll call them Alex and Maya. Early 20s, fresh out of school. Alex gets a job making $55,000. Maya's still finishing her degree. Money's tight but manageable. They split a small apartment, one car, cheap furniture. They cook at home. They don't have much, but there's margin. Then Maya graduates. She gets a job making $50,000. Now look, on paper, they just doubled their income. Household income jumps to $105,000. This is the moment everyone thinks wealth begins. But what actually happens? They move into a nicer place because we can afford it now. Rent goes from $1,200 to $2,200. They upgrade the car because commuting matters now. Car payment appears. Insurance jumps. They start eating out more because they're tired. Convenience becomes valuable. Time becomes scarce. They upgrade phones, furniture, clothes, subscriptions, vacations. Not because they're irresponsible, but because their identity changed. Here's what most people don't realize. Income doesn't just increase spending power. It changes your baseline. It rewires what normal feels like. Psychologists call this lifestyle inflation. But that phrase almost understates the danger. Because what's really happening is that your fixed costs are quietly locking in your future. Now look at the math. Let's say Alex and Maya now spend $6,500 a month all in. Rent, car, food, insurance, subscriptions, debt, everything. That's $78,000 a year. On $105,000 gross, after taxes, maybe they're taking home $80,000, which means their entire life now depends on both incomes continuing uninterrupted. One layoff, one pregnancy, one health issue, one burnout moment, and suddenly the whole system breaks. This is the two income trap. And it's not just financial, it's psychological. Because once your lifestyle requires two incomes, you lose flexibility, you lose negotiating power, you lose optionality. You stop asking, is this job right for me? And start asking, can I afford to lose this paycheck? That's not wealth. That's dependence with a nicer couch. Now you might be thinking, okay, Jay, but two incomes are just reality now. Everything's expensive. You're not wrong. But here's the uncomfortable part. The problem isn't two incomes. The problem is what we do after the second income arrives. See, most households treat the second income as permission to upgrade life instead of insurance against risk. Historically, two-income households were supposed to create stability. One income paid the bills. The second created savings, resilience, freedom. But culturally, we flipped it. Now both incomes pay the bills, and savings, if it exists at all, becomes optional. This is why so many high-income households feel constantly anxious, because deep down, they know the math is brittle. And this is where psychology kicks in hard. There's a concept called hedonic adaptation. It basically means humans are terrible at staying satisfied. Whatever your current situation is, your brain quickly adjusts and starts craving more. So when income rises, happiness spikes briefly, then returns to baseline. But expenses don't revert, they stay elevated. That's why earning more doesn't make you feel rich, because rich isn't about income, it's about margin. Margin is the gap between what you earn and what you need. And two-income households often have less margin than single-income households, despite earning more. Now look, let's compare two scenarios. Household A earns $70,000 on one income and spends $45,000 a year. Household B earns $130,000 on two incomes and spends $115,000 a year. Who's wealthier? Household A has $25,000 of margin. Household B has $15,000 and double the stress. Yet from the outside, Household B looks more successful. Bigger house, better cars, better Instagram. But wealth is invisible. Fragility is invisible too, until it isn't. And here's the part that almost nobody wants to admit. The two-income problem is deeply tied to identity. Because when income rises, we don't just buy things. We buy status. We buy belonging. We buy proof that our hard work paid off. So when someone suggests, maybe don't upgrade your lifestyle when the second income comes in, it feels like an insult, like regression, like failure. But that reaction, that's ego, not math. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but what's the alternative? Just live like students forever? No, that's not the point. The point is intentional asymmetry. Here's what most people don't realize. The fastest way to build wealth in a two-income household isn't maximizing lifestyle, it's decoupling lifestyle from income. Meaning, one income builds the life. The second income builds the future. Let me say that again, because this is the core idea. One income covers fixed costs, the other creates margin. That margin becomes savings, investments, optionality, freedom. And when you do that, something powerful happens psychologically. You stop fearing job loss. You stop tolerating toxic work environments. You stop clinging to income out of survival. Money becomes a tool instead of a leash. Now let's talk numbers again. If your household earns $120,000 and you design your lifestyle to survive on $70,000, that remaining $50,000 isn't extra, it's leverage. Over 10 years, investing $40,000 a year at a modest 7% return turns into over $550,000. That's not flashy, that's not viral, but that's real wealth. And here's the shocking stat. According to Vanguard data, households that automate investing immediately after income increases are over 3 times more likely to reach financial independence than households that wait until things settle. Because things never settle. Spending always expands to meet income unless you interrupt it. Now look, this is where most people mess up. They wait until after they upgrade to start saving. After the nicer place, after the newer car, after life stabilizes. But life doesn't stabilize upward. It stabilizes at whatever level you lock in. So if you're in a two-income household right now, here's the uncomfortable but empowering question you need to ask. If one income disappeared tomorrow, how long could we survive without panic? Not how long you could technically scrape by. How long you could live without fear. 3 months? 6 months? A year? If the answer makes your stomach drop, that's not a personal failure. That's a system problem. And systems can be redesigned. Now here's the psychological shift that changes everything. Stop asking, what can we afford? Start asking, what does this cost us in freedom? Because every fixed expense is a silent commitment. It commits your future income, your future time, your future stress levels. A $700 car payment isn't just $700. It's hours of your life every month that are already spoken for. A bigger house isn't just square footage. It's maintenance, utilities, mental load, and reduced flexibility. Once you see expenses this way, the game changes. And this is where it gets interesting. Because wealth isn't built by dramatic moves. It's built by boring constraints applied consistently. High-income households who actually get rich do a few counterintuitive things. They delay upgrades longer than feels socially comfortable. They treat raises as invisible. They increase savings rates faster than lifestyle. They design their life so that losing one income is inconvenient, not catastrophic. And psychologically, that creates a sense of calm most people never experience. Because calm comes from slack. Slack comes from margin. Margin comes from restraint. Now you might be thinking, okay, but what if we already upgraded? Are we stuck? No. But you have to be honest. The way out of the two-income trap isn't more income. It's re-engineering fixed costs. That might mean downsizing later than you wanted to. Driving the car longer than feels exciting. Saying no to upgrades that everyone else says yes to. Not because you can't afford them, but because you value freedom more. And here's the surprising part. Once you create margin, happiness actually increases. Multiple studies show that financial anxiety decreases more from increased savings buffers than from increased income. In other words, knowing you're safe matters more than earning more. So if you're watching this and you're earning more than you ever have, but still feel behind, you're not broken. You're just playing a game that was rigged to reward appearances over resilience. The two-income problem isn't about money. It's about boundaries. And the households that win, they set boundaries early and protect them aggressively. So here's the challenge. If you're in a two-income household, decide which income builds the present and which builds the future. Automate the future before lifestyle gets a vote. Design your life so that money creates options, not obligations. Because real wealth isn't being able to buy more. It's being able to walk away. And once you taste that, earning more finally starts to feel like progress. Not pressure, not fear, progress. And that's the difference.